The single red candle on the slice of grocery store sheet cake flickered, casting a long, dancing shadow across the mahogany dining table that felt far too large for just one man. I stared at the envelope sitting next to my fork, a thick manila packet that my son, Brendan, had slid across the polished wood with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. He told me it was a gift, a way to secure my future and take the load off now that my health had taken a minor stumble, but as I reached for my reading glasses, the heavy thud of a car door slamming outside broke the silence. Before I tell you what I did next, please like and subscribe to follow this story. I didn't open the envelope immediately. I just let my hand rest on top of it, feeling the weight of the paper inside. It was heavy, dense with legal jargon and intent. At 58 years old, I wasn't exactly a geriatric case, but a minor stroke 3 months ago had left me with a temporary tremor in my left hand and a slight limp that the doctors promised would fade with physical therapy. To the outside world, and apparently to my son sitting across from me, those symptoms were blood in the water. "Open it, Dad," Brendan urged, his voice tight. He adjusted his tie, a garish silk thing that looked expensive but was likely a knockoff. Brendan was all about appearances. "It's peace of mind, that's what I wanted to give you for your birthday, peace of mind." I looked at him, really looked at him. He was 32, with a softness around the jaw that spoke of easy living and a hardness in the eyes that spoke of desperate debts. I knew about the gambling, of course. I knew about the failed venture in cryptocurrency that he thought I was too old school to understand. He didn't know that I still received alerts on every movement of the family trust, or that my old school contacts in the city included private investigators who could find a needle in a haystack, let alone a six-figure debt to a loan shark in Atlantic City. "Peace of mind," I repeated, my voice steady. The stroke hadn't touched my speech, thank God. "That's a big gift, Brendan." "The biggest," he said, taking a sip of the iced tea I poured him. He was sweating despite the air conditioning humming along at a crisp 68 degrees. "It's just standard paperwork, Dad, power of attorney, but the durable kind. It just means if you have another episode, I can make sure the bills get paid. I can make sure the house doesn't fall into disrepair. You wouldn't have to worry about the business. I could sign checks, manage the portfolio, just until you're back on your feet." "I am back on my feet," I said, tapping the table. "Well, fully back, 100%, he corrected quickly. "Right now you need to focus on healing. Stress is the killer, right? That's what Dr. Evans said. Stress is the silent killer." I picked up the silver cake knife, not to cut the cake, but just to turn it over in my hands, watching the light catch the blade. "You brought a notary." Brendan nodded eagerly, gesturing toward the hallway. "She's waiting in the car. I didn't want to bring a stranger in until you were ready. I wanted this to be a family moment first, but she can come in whenever. We just need a few signatures. She stamps it and it's done. You're protected." I finally opened the clasp of the envelope. I slid the stack of papers out. It was thick, at least 30 pages. "That's a lot of paper for peace of mind," I murmured. "Lawyers," Brendan scoffed, trying to sound casual. "You know how they are, they get paid by the word. It's all boilerplate stuff." I put on my glasses. I didn't just glance at it, I began to read. The room was silent, save for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the foyer. It was a rhythmic, heavy sound asterisk talk 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 asterisk that usually soothed me, but today it felt like a countdown. I read the first paragraph, then the second. This wasn't just a medical power of attorney. This wasn't even a standard financial power of attorney for emergencies. This was a general durable power of attorney with an immediate effectiveness clause. It granted the agent Brendan the power to sell real estate, liquidate stocks, change beneficiary designations on insurance policies, and access all safe deposit boxes. There was a specific clause on page 4, gifting powers. It allowed the agent to make gifts of my property to himself, provided it was for estate planning purposes. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with my heart condition. It was the chill of absolute clarity. My son wasn't here to protect me, he was here to strip mine me. He was banking on my tremor, on the fear of another stroke, to bully me into handing over the keys to a kingdom I had built brick by brick over 40 years. "Clause 4, Section B," I said aloud, not looking up. "Unlimited gifting authority." Brendan shifted in his chair. The wood creaked. "Tax strategy, Dad. It's to lower the estate tax burden. If we move assets now, the government gets less later." "And you get more now," I said. "It stays in the family," he argued, his voice pitching up an octave. "It's all for the family." I looked up at him. "Brendan, I'm 58. My father lived to be 92. Do you really think I'm ready to hand over the checkbook?" "It's not handing it over," he snapped, his patience fraying. "It's sharing the burden. You almost died, Dad. You were in the ICU for 3 days. Do you know how scary that was for me?" "For you?" I asked softly. "Yes, for me. I didn't know if the business would survive. I didn't know if the accounts were frozen. I was helpless. This," He gestured violently at the papers. "This makes sure I'm never helpless again." "You mean it ensures you're never broke again," I corrected. His face went red. "That's not fair, I'm trying to help you." "I have a lawyer, Brendan, George, you know George." "Why didn't George draft this?" Brendan waved a hand dismissively. "George is old, he's slow, I used a specialist, someone who understands modern asset protection." I looked back down at the document. It was predatory. It was essentially a voluntary conservatorship. If I signed this, Brendan could legally sell this house out from under me next week, put me in a state-run facility, and drain my accounts to pay off his bookies before the ink was dry. And because I was competent when I signed it, undoing it would be a nightmare of litigation. I needed time. I needed to see how far he was willing to push. "I need coffee," I said, pushing the papers slightly away. "If I'm going to read 30 pages of boilerplate, I need caffeine." "I'll make it," Brendan said, half rising. "No," I said firmly. "Sit, you're the guest. It's my birthday. I'll make it. It'll take me a moment, my leg, you know." I stood up slowly, exaggerating the limp just a fraction. I saw Brendan's eyes track the weakness. He was calculating. He was thinking, "Look at him, he's an old man already. He needs this." I walked into the kitchen, the swinging door closing behind me. I leaned against the granite counter and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking, but not from the stroke. They were shaking from rage. I filled the kettle. I moved with deliberate slowness. I could hear Brendan pacing in the dining room. He was on his phone. I strained to hear. "Yeah, he's reading it. No, he's hesitating. I know, look, he's weak, he'll sign, I just have to guilt him a bit more. Yeah, the notary is ready. Don't worry about the money, Tony, by tonight I'll have access." Tony, Anthony the Ant Riccardi, a lone shark who operated out of a warehouse in the industrial district, so it was that bad. Brendan wasn't just greedy, he was desperate. He was likely threatened with physical harm. I felt a pang of pity, sharp and deep, but it was quickly cauterized by the reality of the situation. He wasn't coming to me for help. He wasn't asking his father to bail him out of a jam. He was trying to steal my life to save his own skin. He was willing to sacrifice me. The kettle whistled. I poured the water. I arranged a tray with cups, sugar, and cream. I took my time. When I pushed back through the door, 10 minutes had passed since he arrived. Brendan was sitting again, looking at his watch. "Coffee," I said, setting the tray down. "Dad, we really should get the notary in. She charges by the hour." "Let her wait," I said, sitting down. "I want to talk about your son." Brendan blinked. "Leo, what about him?" "I haven't seen him in 2 years," I said. "Not since he started that internship in Chicago. How is he?" Brendan rolled his eyes. "He's fine. He's Leo. Too smart for his own good. Thinks he's better than us." "Better than us." "You know what I mean. He doesn't call. He doesn't visit. He's ashamed of the family business. He wanted to be a fancy corporate lawyer. He wanted to study law," I said. "I paid for his tuition." "Yeah, I know," Brendan said bitterly. "You did a lot for him, more than you did for my ventures. I funded 3 of your companies, Brendan. They all failed. Market conditions," he argued, "and bad partners. It wasn't my fault." "It's never your fault," I said softly. Just then the doorbell rang. It was a crisp, authoritative chime that echoed through the high ceilings of the house. Brendan jumped. "Who is that, the notary?" "No," I said, checking my own watch. "The notary is in her car, remember, go answer it." Brendan looked confused. He stood up, smoothing his suit jacket. "Did you invite someone?" "It's my birthday," I said simply. "Go get the door." Brendan walked to the foyer. I heard the heavy oak door creak open, then silence. "Hello, Dad," a voice said. I smiled. It was a deep voice, calm and resonant. Brendan stammered. "Leo, what are you doing here?" "Grandpa invited me," Leo said. "It's his birthday. Are you going to let E in, or are you going to block the hallway all day?" Footsteps approached. Leo walked into the dining room. He looked like a younger, sharper version of me. He was tall, wearing a charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, not off the rack. He carried a leather briefcase, slim and battered, the kind a working lawyer uses, not a prop. He looked at me and his face softened. "Happy birthday, Grandpa." "Leo," I said, standing up to embrace him. Hugged me carefully, mindful of my recovery but with genuine warmth. "You made good time from the airport." "Traffic was light," Leo said. He pulled back and looked at Brendan, who was hovering by the doorway, looking like a deer caught in headlights. "Hello, Dad. I didn't know you were coming," Brendan said, his voice tight. "Surprise," Leo said drily. He looked at the table. He saw the cake. He saw the coffee. And then he saw the thick stack of papers. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. Leo was 26, freshly barred, and working for one of the toughest contract law firms in Chicago. I could see the shift in his posture. The grandson vanished. The attorney appeared. "What's this?" Leo asked, walking over to the table. "Just some paperwork," Brendan said quickly, stepping forward to intercept him. "Dad and I were just handling some business." Leo ignored him. He picked up the document. He didn't ask for permission. He flipped to the first page. "Verbal power of attorney," Leo read aloud. He flipped a few more pages. He scanned with a speed that only comes from reading thousands of contracts. Immediate effect, revocation of prior powers, broad gifting authority. He looked up at his father, his eyes were cold. You're trying to get him to sign this. It's for his protection. Brendan shouted, the pretense of calm evaporating. He had a stroke, Leo. He can't manage the estate alone anymore. I'm stepping up. I'm taking responsibility. Leo looked at me. Grandpa, did you ask for this? I did not, I said calmly, sipping my coffee. Leo turned back to Brendan. There it is. He didn't ask for it, and looking at this. Dad, this is a liquidation order. Clause 7 allows you to sell the primary residence without spousal or secondary consent. Clause 9 waives the fiduciary duty to account for expenses under $5,000. You could drain the accounts in $5,000 chunks and never have to show a receipt. You don't know what you're talking about, Brendan spat. You're just a kid. This is family business. This is legal business, Leo said, dropping the papers back onto the table with a heavy thud. And it's garbage, it's predatory. If Grandpa signed this, I could have it thrown out in court in a week for undue influence, but by then you'd have already moved the liquid assets offshore or into crypto wallets. Brendan's face went pale. You think I'd steal from my own father? I think you owe Tony Riccardi $150,000, Leo said. The silence that followed was absolute. Brendan froze. I watched him closely. I hadn't told Leo the name. I hadn't told Leo about the debt. How? Brendan whispered. Leo tapped his briefcase. Grandpa isn't the only one who does his homework. When he called me last week and told me you were suddenly very interested in his estate planning, I made some calls. I have friends in risk management. Your name came up on a few watch lists. Brendan looked at me betrayed. You called him, you set this up. I didn't set up your gambling addiction, Brendan, I said, and I didn't set up your decision to come here on my birthday and try to trick me into signing away my life. I have to pay them, Brendan said, his voice cracking. He slumped into a chair, the fight draining out of him. They're going to hurt me, Dad. They said they'd break my legs. They said they'd come to the house. So you decided to sell my house to save your legs, I said. I didn't have a choice, he sobbed. There is always a choice, I said. You could have asked, you could have told me the truth, I'm your father. If you had come to me and said, Dad, I'm in trouble, I made a mistake, do you think I would have let them hurt you? Brendan wiped his eyes. You would have lectured me. You would have looked at me with that disappointment. Better disappointment than a felony fraud charge, Leo interjected. Which is what this would be if you executed it. I stood up. My legs felt stronger now. The adrenaline of the confrontation had cleared the fog. I walked over to the sideboard where I kept my own briefcase. Leo, I said, show him. Leo opened his briefcase. He pulled out a single, sleek folder. It wasn't 30 pages, it was 10. What is that? Brendan asked, sniffing. This, I said, placing it in front of him, is the actual plan. Leo took over. This is the Arthur J. Miller Irrevocable Trust. It was established 3 days ago. Grandpa has already transferred the title of this house, the primary investment, accounts and the majority share of the construction firm into it. Brendan's eyes widened. You moved everything that matters, I said, and Leo continued, I am the trustee. Brendan looked from me to Leo. You gave it all to him. No, I said, I didn't give it to him. He manages it. He has a fiduciary duty to manage it for the beneficiaries. You know who the beneficiaries are? Brendan shook his head. You are, I said, and Leo and your sister. Brendan looked confused. But if I'm a beneficiary, subject to conditions, Leo said, tapping a paragraph. The spendthrift clause, it protects the assets from the beneficiary's creditors. That means Tony Riccardi can't touch a dime of the trust money. Even if he sues you, even if he threatens you, the money isn't yours, it belongs to the trust. But how does that help me? Brendan cried. I need cash now. The trust pays you a monthly stipend, I explained. Enough to live on, enough for rent, food, a car, a modest life, but it doesn't give you lump sums, and it certainly doesn't give you $150,000 to throw into a blackjack table. Then I'm dead, Brendan whispered. They'll kill me. No, I said, they won't. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a plain white envelope. I tossed it onto the table next to the fraudulent power of attorney. Open it, I said. Brendan opened it. Inside was a cashier's check. $150,000, Brendan read, his voice trembling. Payable to cash. You take that, I said, my voice hard. You pay off Riccardi. Tonight you tell him you're out. You tell him the well is dry because it is. If you come back to him, he knows he can't get anything more from you because you don't own anything. The trust owns it all. Brendan held the check like it was a holy relic. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. Dad, thank you. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything yet, I said. There's a price. Leo slid a single sheet of paper forward. What is this? Brendan asked. Your resignation, Leo said, from the board of directors of Miller Construction, and a waiver of any future claim to serve as power of attorney or executor of the estate. Brendan stared at the paper. You're kicking me out of the company. You tried to steal the company, Brendan, I said. You proved today that you cannot be trusted with power. You can be my son. You can come to Sunday dinner. You can live in the guest cottage if you lose your apartment, but you will never, ever sign a check for my business again. Brendan looked at the check, then at the resignation letter. He looked at the power of attorney he had brought, the weapon he had tried to use against me. "If you don't sign the resignation," Leo said calmly, "Grandpa shreds the check. And I call the district attorney and show them the fraud you attempted today. Attempted elder abuse is a serious crime, Dad." Brendan looked at his son. He saw no hesitation in Leo's eyes. He saw the same resolve that I had used to build a company from a single pickup truck. Brendan picked up the pen. His hand was shaking worse than mine ever had. He signed the resignation. He signed the waiver. Leo took the papers immediately, sliding them into his briefcase. "The check," I said, nodding to Brendan. "Take it, go pay your debt, then go home." Brendan stood up. He clutched the check to his chest. He looked small. He looked like the child who used to break things and try to hide the pieces under the rug. "Happy birthday, Dad," he whispered. "Goodbye, Brendan," I said. He walked out. We heard the front door close. We heard his car start and peel away, driving too fast as always. The house was quiet again. The grandfather clock ticked. Tock, tock. I let out a long breath, slumping slightly in my chair. The energy required to hold that facade of iron strength evaporated, leaving me feeling every minute of my 58 years. Leo moved instantly. He didn't rush, but he was there, his hand on my shoulder. "You okay, Grandpa?" "I'm okay," I said, patting his hand. "Just tired. It's a hard thing, Leo, to look at your child and see an enemy." "He's not an enemy," Leo said, sitting in the chair Brendan had vacated. "Just weak and desperate people do terrible things." "He would have done it," I said. "If you hadn't come, if I hadn't prepared, he would have signed everything away." "But he didn't," Leo said firmly. "Because you raised him, but you also raised me, and you taught me to read the fine print." I chuckled, a dry, raspy sound. "That I did." I looked at the table. The power of attorney papers were still there. I picked them up. "Do you have a shredder in that briefcase?" I asked. Leo smiled. "No, but I think we have a fireplace." I stood up, grabbing the offensive stack of papers. Leo grabbed the cake and the forks. We walked into the living room. I struck a match and lit the kindling in the hearth. It caught quickly. I tossed Brendan's gift onto the flames. We watched as the edges curled and blackened. The words "general durable power of attorney" turned to ash and floated up the chimney. Leo set the cake down on the coffee table. He lit the single red candle again. "Make a wish," he said. I looked at the fire, then at my grandson. I had secured my legacy. I had protected my life's work. I had saved my son from a bullet, even if I had to break his pride to do it. "I have everything I need," I said. I blew out the candle. Leo cut the cake. It was cheap grocery store vanilla, overly sweet and slightly dry. We ate it in comfortable silence, the fire crackling in front of us. "So," I said, wiping a crumb from my lip, "you're the trustee now. You know that's a lot of work. I expect quarterly reports." Leo grinned, raising his fork in a toast. "You'll have them, Grandpa." "And I bill at $400 an hour. Family discount?" I asked. "We'll talk," he said. I laughed. For the first time all day, it was a real laugh. The house didn't feel so empty anymore. The papers were burned, the debts were paid, and the right man was watching the gate. It was a good birthday. "You're staying tonight?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Leo had that look in his eye, the same look his mother used to get when she decided she was going to fix a leaky faucet or reorganize the pantry. A stubborn, quiet resolve that brooked no argument. "I'm staying," Leo confirmed. "I don't trust Brendan not to circle back. He's desperate, Grandpa, and desperate men are unpredictable. I'll take the guest room. I have an early briefing with the partners tomorrow, but I can do it via Zoom from the library." I nodded, grateful but trying not to show just how grateful. At 58, I wasn't an invalid. I ran a conglomerate that employed 4,000 people. I could bench press my body weight on a good day, and I boxed 3 times a week with a trainer who didn't pull his punches. But tonight, the weight pressing down on me wasn't physical. It was the crushing gravity of failure, not in business, but in blood. "Suit yourself," I grumbled, standing up and brushing the crumbs from my trousers. "But don't expect me to make you pancakes in the morning. The housekeeper is off until Tuesday. I know where the coffee is, that's all I need." Leo stood and began clearing the plates. I watched him for a moment. He was sharp, tailored, and precise, but he moved with an easy grace that Brendan had never possessed. Brendan had always been frantic, vibrating with a nervous energy that repelled people rather than attracted them. Leo drew people in. He was calm water. I left him to the dishes, a task he insisted on doing despite my protests, and retreated to my study. The study was the heart of the house. It was a room of mahogany and leather, smelling of old paper and the faint, lingering scent of the cigars I had given up 10 years ago. I walked over to the large bay window that overlooked the driveway. The rain had started again, a slow, miserable drizzle that blurred the streetlights into hazy orange smears. I poured myself a scotch, just one finger. I swirled the amber liquid, watching the light catch in the crystal, and let my mind drift back to the beginning. It was dangerous to look back, I knew that. Nostalgia was a trap for old men who had stopped building, but tonight I felt entitled to a moment of review. I needed to understand how I had arrived here, standing in a multi-million-dollar fortress, protected by a grandson I hadn't raised, against a son I had given everything to. I sat in the high-backed leather chair behind my desk and unlocked the bottom drawer. Inside, beneath a stack of corporate ledgers, was a photo album. It wasn't the polished, curated album that sat on the coffee table in the living room. This was the reject pile, the candid shots, the mistakes. I flipped it open. There was Brendan, age 7. He was crying in the photo, holding a scraped knee. I remembered that day. He'd fallen off his bike. I hadn't picked him up. I had stood 10 feet away and told him to stop crying and get back on. Tears don't fix the scrape, Brendan. Getting back up proves you're stronger than the pavement. Had I been too hard or not hard enough, I turned the page. Brendan at 16, standing next to a brand new Mustang. He looked smug, entitled. I had bought him that car not because he earned it, but because I was guilty. I was working 80-hour weeks, acquiring the textiles plant in Vietnam and fighting a hostile takeover bid from Comwater rivals in New York. The car was a bribe. Please be happy. Please don't need me right now. He wrecked it 3 weeks later. DUI. I paid the judge. I paid the other driver. I buried the story. I took a sip of the scotch. It burned, a welcome fire in my chest. That was the pattern, wasn't it? I demanded strength, but every time he showed weakness, I covered. With money, I had crippled him with a golden crutch. The door to the study creaked open. I didn't look up, knowing it was Leo. "You're brooding," Leo said. He walked in, carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He set one down on a coaster, always the coaster, and sat in the chair opposite me. "I'm reviewing," I corrected. "There's a difference. Reviewing the quarterly earnings, reviewing the sunk costs." I tapped the photo of the wrecked Mustang. Leo leaned forward and looked at the picture. He didn't offer a platitude. He didn't say, "You did your best." That was one of the things I respected most about him. He dealt in facts. "He was always going to be who he is," Leo said quietly. "My mom used to say that Brendan was born with a hole in his pocket. No matter what you put in, it just fell through." "Your mother," I said, the words heavy. "I miss her, Leo, every day. Sarah, my daughter, Leo's mother, she had been the steel in the family spine. She had the business sense, the grit, the fire. When she died of ovarian cancer 6 years ago, I thought the world had ended. I thought the legacy died with her. I hadn't realized then that she had already poured everything she was into the young man sitting across from me. She knew this day would come," Leo said. "She told me a week before the end. She said, 'Grandpa is going to need you. Brendan is going to try to eat him alive when he starts to slow down. You have to be the wall.'" I looked up surprised. "She said that." "She did. She knew you wouldn't see it coming, or rather that you would see it, but you wouldn't want to believe it. It's hard to believe your own son is a vulture." "He's not a vulture," I said, though my defense was weak. "He's prey. He's being hunted, Leo. That debt, you saw his eyes. He's terrified." Leo took a sip of his coffee. "Prey can be dangerous when it's cornered. We dealt with the power of attorney tonight. That was the legal attack. But if he owes money to the kind of people I think he owes money to, this isn't over. They aren't going to care that we burned a piece of paper." I set my glass down. The warmth of the scotch was fading, replaced by the cold reality of the situation. "Who do you think holds the paper on him?" "I made some calls while I was doing the dishes," Leo said. "I have a friend in Vice. He ran Brendan's name through the quiet channels." I stiffened, and "It's not Vegas Sharks, Grandpa. It's not a casino debt." Leo paused, his eyes locking onto mine. "It's the Slavic syndicate out of South Boston, specifically a man named Yuri Volkov." The name hit me like a physical blow. I knew Volkov, not personally, but I knew the reputation. Construction racketeering, high-interest lending, import-export of things that shouldn't be imported or exported. They were brutal, efficient, and entirely lacking in the kind of gentlemanly rules I was used to playing by in the corporate world. "How much?" I asked. "2 million, Leo said. "Plus Vig, it's probably closer to 3 by now." I let out a low whistle. $3 million. To me, it was a manageable sum, a hit to the liquidity, sure, but not a death blow. To Brendan, it was an astronomical impossibility. "He borrowed $3 million from the Russian mob," I whispered, shaking my head in disbelief. "What on earth for?" "A tech startup," Leo said, his voice tinged with disgust. "Some cryptocurrency arbitrage scheme. He thought he couldn't lose. He thought he'd double it in a month, pay them back, and keep the profit to show you he was a real businessman. And it crashed. It was a rug pull. The whole thing was a scam. He lost every dime in 48 hours. I closed the photo album with a snap. The nostalgia was gone. The melancholy was replaced by a cold, hard anger. Brendan hadn't just been foolish, he had been catastrophically stupid, and in his stupidity he had invited wolves to my doorstep. "Volkov won't wait," I said. "If Brendan can't pay, they'll look for the next available asset. That's me." "Exactly," Leo said. "That's why the power of attorney was so urgent. Volkov probably put him up to it. Get control of Daddy's money or we start breaking fingers." Now that the legal route is dead, they're going to escalate. Let them come, I said, feeling the old iron straightening my back. I dealt with the Teamsters in the 80s. I dealt with the SEC in the 90s. I'm not afraid of a Southie thug. The Teamsters didn't use C4, Grandpa, Leo said drily. We need security, real security, not just the alarm system. I have the gate. The gate is for solicitors. I'm hiring a private detail. Starting tonight, I have a firm on retainer for the trust. I wanted to argue. I wanted to say I didn't need babysitters in my own home. But I looked at Leo, calm, professional, prepared, and I realized that arguing would be vanity. He was doing exactly what I had trained him to do. He was managing risk. Fine, I said, but tell them T. Oh, stay out of the garden. The azaleas are just starting to bloom. Leo smiled, a genuine expression that lightened the mood. I'll put it in the contract, no stepping on the flowers. The night passed uneasily. I slept in fits and starts, waking at every creak of the old house settling. My dreams were a chaotic mix of Brendan's crying face and the smell of burning paper. When I woke, the rain had stopped. The morning sun was trying to push through the gray cloud cover, casting a pale, washed-out light over the estate. I dressed quickly: slacks, a button-down, a cashmere cardigan, armor for a retired king. I went downstairs to find the kitchen buzzing with activity. Leo was there, dressed in a sharp navy suit, typing on his laptop at the island. But he wasn't alone. Two men were standing by the back door. They were large, wearing nondescript tactical clothing that screamed private military contractor to anyone who knew what to look for. One was checking a monitor that displayed feeds from new cameras I hadn't authorized. Morning, Leo said without looking up from his screen. Coffee is in the pot. Grandpa, meet Davis and Miller. They're with Aegis Security. The men nodded respectfully. Sir, the larger one, Davis said. Gentlemen, I replied, pouring myself a cup. I trust you found the perimeter to your liking. There are some blind spots on the north side, Davis said, his voice gravel. We're setting up sensors now, and we've stationed a car at the end of the lane. Good. I turned to Leo. You've been busy. Volkov isn't a theory anymore, Leo said. I got a message this morning. A courier dropped off an envelope at your office downtown. My hand froze halfway to my mouth. At the office. Security intercepted it. It was a copy of Brendan's promissory note, and a photo of you taken yesterday walking out of the bakery with the cake. A chill ran down my spine. They had been watching. They're sending a message, I said. They're accelerating, Leo corrected. They know the power of attorney play failed. They know you're the backstop. They want a meeting. With me? With the checkbook, which is you. Leo closed his laptop. I'm going to meet with them. Absolutely not, I snapped. The reaction was visceral. You are the trustee, you are the lawyer, you are not the bagman. If anyone meets with Volkov, it's me. Grandpa, you're not going to a sit-down with the Russian mob. I am not sending my grandson to clean up my son's mess, I said, my voice rising. I have spent my life shielding this family. I will not hide behind you now. Leo stood up. He was tall, taller than me now. You aren't shielding the family, Grandpa. You're the target. If you go there, they have leverage. If I go, I'm just a lawyer representing a client. I have legal protections. I have distance. They don't care about the bar association, Leo. They care about getting paid, Leo countered calmly. And they know that if they hurt the lawyer, the police heat becomes unbearable. If they hurt you, well, that's just business. We stared at each other. It was a standoff, the grandfather and the grandson, the creator and the protector. Compromise, I said finally. Leo raised an eyebrow. Do it here, I said, on my turf in my house. If Volkov wants to talk payment, he comes to me. I don't go to some warehouse in the seaport. Leo considered this. He looked at Davis, the security lead. Davis gave a slight nod. Controlled environment, Davis said. We can secure the room, metal detectors, pat downs. We control the exits. It's safer than open ground. Leo looked back at me. He didn't like it, I could tell. He wanted to keep the filth away from the sanctuary. But he also knew I was stubborn enough to drive down to South Boston myself if he refused. Fine, Leo said. Here today, but we dictate the terms and Davis is in the room. Agreed. Leo pulled out his phone. I'll make the call. The hours leading up to the meeting were excruciating. The house, usually a place of silence and solitude, was transformed into a command center. Davis and Miller were joined by two more men. They swept the library for bugs, ironic, considering we were inviting the bugs in, and positioned themselves strategically. I sat in the library trying to read a report on the Asian markets, but the words swam before my eyes. I kept thinking about Brendan. Where was he? Was he with them? Was he safe, or was he being held as collateral? I hadn't called him. I couldn't. If I heard his voice, I might break. I might promise them anything just to keep him safe, and that was exactly what they wanted. I had to be cold. I had to be the iron facade. At 2:00 p.m., a black SUV rolled up the long gravel driveway. I watched from the window. Two men got out. One was a mountain of muscle in a cheap suit. The other was older, leaner, dressed in cashmere that probably cost more than my first car. Yuri Volkov, he didn't look like a thug. He looked like a banker who enjoyed foreclosures a little too much. "Showtime," Leo said, stepping up beside me. He looked impeccable, cool, detached. "Remember," Leo whispered, "we don't pay the full amount, we negotiate. If we pay full, they'll think you're a soft touch and they'll invent new debts next week. We buy the debt at a discount or we threaten to turn over evidence of the racketeering to the FBI." "Do we have evidence?" I asked. "I have a folder full of blank paper and some printouts of Wikipedia articles on RICO laws," Leo grinned. "But he doesn't know that." I chuckled. It was a dark, nervous sound. "You're a shark, Leo. I learned from the best." We went downstairs. Davis opened the front door. He patted them down thoroughly. The mountain scowled, but Volkov submitted with a bored expression, holding his arms out. "Clean," Davis said. "Mr. Volkov," I said, standing in the center of the foyer. I didn't offer my hand. "You're trespassing." Volkov smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were dead things like shark glass. "Mr. Calloway, thank you for the hospitality. Nice place. Very classic. Library," I said, turning my back on him. It was a power move. I was showing him I wasn't afraid to turn my back. We filed into the library. I took my seat behind the desk. Leo stood to my right. Davis stood by the door, arms crossed. Volkov sat in the guest chair, crossing his legs elegantly. His muscles stood behind him. "Let's skip the pleasantries," I said. "You hold paper on my son." "Brendan is a spirited investor," Volkov said, his voice smooth, heavily accented. "But not a lucky one. He owes my organization $3.2 million. "3.2, Leo interjected. "The principal was 2, the rest is usury, illegal interest." Volkov turned his gaze to Leo. "And you are Leo Calloway." "Trustee of the Calloway Estate and General Counsel. I handle the money and the legal problems." "A lawyer," Volkov sneered slightly. "I hate lawyers, they complicate simple transactions." "I'm here to simplify it," Leo said. "Brendan has no money, you know this. He has no assets, you know this too. That's why you tried to force the power of attorney. That failed." "It was a setback," Volkov admitted. "But debts must be paid. If Brendan cannot pay and the father has the means." Surely a father wants to help his son. Accidents happen so easily these days. Cars lose brakes, houses have electrical fires. I slammed my hand on the desk. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Don't you threaten me in my own house, Volkov. I am not some bodega owner you can shake down for protection money. I have the police commissioner on speed dial. I have senators at my dinner table." Volkov didn't flinch. "Senators are expensive friends, but they cannot stop a bullet." "Enough," Leo said, his voice cutting through the tension like a razor. He dropped the folder onto the desk in front of Volkov, the one full of blank paper. "What is this?" Volkov asked. "That," Leo lied smoothly, "is a draft of a federal indictment. My firm has been building a file on your operations in the port of Boston for 6 months. We represent the shipping union. We have dates, times, container numbers. We have the names of your customs contacts." Volkov stared at the folder. Didn't open it, he was calculating. "If anything happens to my grandfather," Leo continued, "or to Brendan or to this house, that file goes to the U.S. Attorney's office within the hour. It's already digitally dead-switched." "You are bluffing," Volkov said softly. "Am I?" Leo leaned in. "Do you want to bet your entire operation on the gamble that a corporate lawyer doesn't keep receipts?" "I don't care about the 3 million, Volkov. To us, that's a rounding error. I care about the nuisance." Volkov looked at Leo, then at me. He saw the resolve. He saw that we weren't just victims, we were players. "So," Volkov said, leaning back, "what is the offer?" "Principal only," I said. 2 million, wired to an offshore account of your choosing today. In exchange, you sign over the promissory note and Brendan is clear, permanently. If you ever approach him again, the deal is off and the file goes to the feds." Volkov drummed his fingers on the arm of the chair. 2 million was better than nothing, and fighting a wealthy family with political connections was messy. Gangsters liked easy prey. We were proving to be very hard to chew. 2.5, Volkov countered. "For the inconvenience," I looked at Leo. Leo gave a barely perceptible nod. 2.2, I said, "take it or leave it." Volkov paused, the silence stretched, filled only by the ticking of the grandfather clock in the hall. "Talk, talk." "Done," Volkov said. Leo moved instantly. He pulled a tablet from his briefcase. "Account number." Volkov recited a string of numbers. Leo tapped them in. "Transfer pending," Leo said. "It will clear in 10 minutes. I will wait." Volkov said. We sat in silence for 10 minutes. It was the longest 10 minutes of my life. I watched the second hand on the clock on the mantel. I thought about the money leaving my accounts. Money I had earned with sweat and blood, gone to pay for Brendan's idiocy. But as the money vanished, so did the threat. "Received," Volkov said, checking his phone. He stood up. He reached into his jacket pocket. Davis tensed, hand moving to his hip. Volkov pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. Brendan's signature was scrawled at the bottom. He tossed it onto my desk. "A pleasure doing business, Mr. Calloway," Volkov said. "You have a smart grandson. Keep him close." Get out, I said. Volkov and his mountain left. We heard the front door close, then the crunch of gravel as the SUV drove away. Only then did I exhale. My hands started to shake. I gripped the edge of the desk to steady them. It's done, Leo said, his voice sounding tired. He slumped into the chair Volkov had vacated. Is it? I asked. I picked up the promissory note. I struck a match, the second time in 24 hours, and set the paper on fire. I dropped it into the heavy crystal ashtray. He's clear, Leo said, legally and physically. He's clear, I agreed, but he's not forgiven. I watched the paper burn. $2.2 million, the price of a son's life. Where is he? I asked. Brendan, Leo asked. He's at a motel in Revere. I had a tracker on his phone. Bring him here, I said. Leo looked at me. Grandpa, are you sure? Maybe you need a cooling-off period. I am cool, I said, and I was. The anger had crystallized into something colder, harder. Bring him here. I want him to know what his life cost, and I want to tell him the new terms. New terms? He's cut off, Leo, completely. No allowance, no trust fund access, no bailouts. He gets a job or he starves. I paid for his life today. Now he has to earn the right to live it. Leo nodded slowly. I'll go get him. Leo stood to leave but stopped at the door. Grandpa, yes, that folder, the indictment draft, yes, it really was just blank paper. I looked at him and for the second time that day I laughed, a real barking laugh. Remind me never to play poker with you, Leo. I bill at $400 an hour, he reminded me with a grin. Bluffing is extra. He left. I was alone in the library again. The house was quiet. The rain had started up once more, tapping against the glass. I poured another finger of scotch. I walked to the window and looked out at the gray afternoon. I felt older than 58. I felt ancient, but I also felt something else. I felt secure. I had built a company. I had built a fortune. I had failed to build a son, but I had helped build a grandson who could stand in the fire and not burn. The legacy was safe. The cost was high, but the legacy was safe. I took a sip of the scotch and waited for my son to come home so I could finally, truly let him go. The wait for Leo to return with Brendan gave me time to think about the nature of inheritance. It wasn't just money. It was trauma. It was expectation. It was the specific way we learned to hide our fear. My father had been a dockworker. He had hands like leather mitts and a temper like a sudden storm. He left me nothing but a gold watch and a fear of poverty that had driven me like a whip for 40 years. I had taken that fear and turned it into an empire. I had sworn my son would never feel that fear. And in doing so, I had robbed him of the very thing that made me. I had taken away the necessity of struggle. I sat down at the desk and pulled out a fresh sheet of legal stationery. I uncapped my fountain pen. The nib scratched against the paper as I began to write. To my grandson, Leo, if you are reading this, then the inevitable has happened. The trust is yours. The company is yours. The burden is yours. Do not make my mistakes. Do not shield your children from the world. Let them scrape their knees. Let them fail. It is the only way they learn how to stand. Regarding Brendan, I paused. What was there to say regarding Brendan? The front door opened. I heard voices in the hall, Leo's calm baritone and Brendan's frantic, higher-pitched tenor. Can't just go in there, Leo. He's going to kill me. He just saved your life, Brendan. The least you can do is look him in the eye. You don't understand. He looks at me like I'm a mistake. Just walk. The library door opened. Brendan looked terrible. He was unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes that smelled of stale sweat and motel soap. His eyes were bloodshot, darting around the room as if expecting Volkov to jump out from behind the curtains. He stopped just inside the door. He couldn't look at me. He looked at the floor, at the bookshelves, anywhere but my face. Sit down, I said. Brendan flinched. He shuffled to the chair, the same chair Volkov had sat in an hour ago. He sat on the edge, ready to bolt. Leo closed the door and leaned against it, crossing his arms. The sentinel. Brendan started, his voice cracking. Dad, I said. I didn't raise my voice. I kept it level, devoid of emotion. Don't apologize. Apologies are for spilling wine on a carpet. You invited a predator into our lives. You risked everything I built. You risked Leo. I didn't mean to, Brendan cried, the tears finally spilling over. I just wanted to fix it. I wanted to pay them back before you found out. I wanted to show you I could do it. Do what? I asked. Be a big shot. You're 50 years old, Brendan. You're not a child trying to impress Daddy with a drawing. You gambled with money you didn't have. I thought it was a sure thing. There are no sure things. I slammed my hand on the desk again. That is the first lesson I ever taught you. There is only work and risk and leverage, and you have never understood any of them. Brendan shrank back into the chair, sobbing into his hands. It was a pathetic sight, my son, my flesh and blood, broken by his own vanity. I looked at Leo. His face was impassive, but I saw the pity in his eyes, not for Brendan but for me. The debt is paid, I said. Brendan looked up, sniffing. What? Volkov, he's paid $2.2 million. Brendan's jaw dropped. A look of relief washed over him so intense it was almost obscene. Oh God, oh thank God. Dad, I promise I'll pay you back. I have this new idea. It's a… Stop. The word hung in the air. "You will not pay me back," I said, "because you will never have $2 million again. You are done, Brendan, done. I am restructuring the estate. As of this morning, you are removed from the family trust. You are removed from the will. You are removed from the board of directors, an honorary title you never deserved anyway." Brendan's face went pale. "Dad, you can't, that's my inheritance." "I just spent your inheritance," I said coldly. "I just gave it to a Russian mobster to keep you from being found in a ditch. That was it. That was your portion." "But how will I live? You have a degree," I said. "You have a name. Get a job. Sell the condo. I put the title in your name years ago. That is the last thing you get. Sell it, buy something smaller, and find work." "I can't work a regular job. I'm a Callaway." "You're a liability," I said. "I'm liquidating my liabilities." Brendan stood up, his face flushing red. Anger replaced the fear. "This is him, isn't it?" He pointed a shaking finger at Leo. "He poisoned you against me. He wants it all for himself. The golden boy. Leo saved you," I said. "Leo negotiated the deal. Leo is the reason you aren't wearing concrete shoes right now. Do not speak to him. He's a thief. He stole my son's place. He stole my father. You vacated the spot," I roared, standing up. "You left it empty." Leo stepped up. "He didn't steal anything, Brendan. He earned it every single day." Brendan stared at me, breathing hard. He looked from me to Leo, realizing finally that there was no crack in the wall. We were a united front. "Get out," I said. "Dad, get out. Go to your condo. Call a realtor. Start your life, Brendan. For the first time, actually start your own life." Brendan looked at me one last time. There was hate in his eyes now. Good. Hate was a fuel, maybe he could use it. He turned and stormed out. He shouldered past Leo, slamming the door behind him. The silence rushed back in. I sank into my chair, the energy drained out of me instantly. I felt dizzy. "Grandpa," Leo was beside me in a second. "I'm fine," I wheezed. "Just give me a minute." Leo poured a glass of water from the carafe on the desk. He handed it to me. I drank it greedily. "That was hard," Leo said. "It was necessary," I replied. "It should have happened 20 years ago." "Maybe." Leo sat on the edge of the desk. "But it's done now. The books are balanced." "Not quite," I said. I reached for the letter I had started writing. I crumpled it up and tossed it in the trash. I didn't need to write a letter to Leo. I could tell him. "Leo," I said, "there's one more thing." "Yeah, the company. I'm stepping down as CEO, effective immediately." Leo froze. "Grandpa, you don't have to do that. You're still—" "I'm tired, Leo. And I'm compromised. I let my emotions cloud my judgment with Brendan for too long. Today proved that. I need to step back. I'll stay on as chairman. I'll glare at people during board meetings, but you run the show." Leo looked at me. He didn't feign false modesty. He didn't argue. He processed the information, analyzed the implications, and accepted the responsibility. "Okay," he said. "I'll draft the press release. We'll announce it Monday. We'll frame it as a planned succession to stabilize the stock price." "Good. And Grandpa?" "Yes. I'm going to need a raise." I laughed again. It was easier this time. "We'll talk." The evening settled in. The rain finally stopped, leaving the world washed clean and glistening. Leo ordered pizza, a distinct downgrade from the usual fare, but exactly what we needed. We ate in the library, the boxes sitting on top of the millions of dollars worth of contracts and legal briefs. "You know," Leo said, pulling a slice of pepperoni from the box, "Brendan isn't going to go quietly. He'll sue. He'll find some lawyer who works on contingency and try to claim undue influence or mental incompetence." "Let him," I said, biting into my slice. "I have the best lawyer in the city." "Who's that?" "You." Leo grinned. "Conflict of interest. I'll have to hire outside counsel, but I know a guy." "You always know a guy." We ate in comfortable silence. The grandfather clock ticked in the hall. Tock, tock. It was a sound I usually associated with time running out. But tonight it sounded different. It sounded like a heartbeat, steady, strong, enduring. I looked at my grandson. He was looking at his phone, probably checking emails, probably planning the next move, the next defense, the next victory. I had lost a son today. In truth, I had lost him a long time ago, but I had gained a future. "Leo," I said. He looked up. "Yeah, happy birthday to me." Leo smiled, raising his Coke can. "Happy birthday, Grandpa." I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking softly. The fire in the hearth had burned down to embers, glowing with a deep, resonant heat. I closed my eyes, listening to the house, listening to the silence, listening to the peace that comes only after the war is won. I was 58, I had scars, I had regrets. But for the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of tomorrow. Let Brendan sue, let the market crash, let the rain come. We were ready.